The career advice, follow your passion, and then you'll be happy with your career, is terrible advice. When I was in college, I was trying to follow my passion and find work that would make me so happy. And it drove me freaking crazy. I changed my major 4 times, and I was so confused about what was going to make me happy that I ended up not being able to find any job at all. And I ended up with the worst job that you could possibly imagine. Well, maybe not the worst you could possibly imagine, but it was really bad. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to talk about how I used that job to become super good at a skill that allowed me to get my dream job. So this episode is about how you can find so much happiness in your career, and it is not by following your passion. Let's rock. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill, and I've spent the last 15 years mastering the art of lasting happiness. Look, happiness isn't just a feeling, it is a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn and master. This show is your training ground. Let your Good Mood Revolution begin now. When I was in college, I was overly concerned about what I should do with my life for my work. I wanted to do work that was exciting, that I was passionate about. The options kind of seemed limitless, and I would stress about it. I remember having conversations with my roommate, Nick Weatherly, saying, man, I don't know what to do with my life. This was a big issue. How do I find work that I'm happy with? How am I going to pick something that I'm really going to enjoy? So I started out in one major, engineering, and I ended up changing my major 3 different times, trying to find the perfect major that would have work that I would be absolutely happy in. Today's episode is about how to choose to be happy in the work that you're in. How can we be really, really happy in our career? And sometimes that does mean making a change. But I'm talking today about the book, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. In this book, Cal's main argument is that following your passion is really bad career advice. And in fact, there are different things that create work that we love. So in college, I went from engineering and I thought, hey, what's my passion? I was passionate about art. I love to draw. So I changed my major to an art major, completely different than engineering. And I bought a giant art pad and I bought all the pencils and I bought the markers and I took all the art classes for a whole semester. I was an art student for 1 semester. And then I found out that I actually wasn't extremely good at art. Even though I enjoyed it and it was my passion, I wasn't super good at it. And there were people that were far better, whose skills were probably beyond where mine could ever go, that were getting the best jobs, the jobs that would be really fulfilling and fun. And so after 1 semester of art, realizing I would never have one of the dream jobs when it came to being an artist, I switched my major again. And this time I said, well, maybe I could do something that's art with business. So I went into marketing and I took all the marketing classes and I even got a job as a marketing intern. And when I was in marketing, I thought, man, this is kind of dull a little bit to me. I'm not passionate about this. And then I ended up meeting a guy who ran a sales department. And he said, you should take a sales class. And so I took a sales class and it was pretty fun. And I changed my major again into sales. We had actually a sales major. And this kind of flip-flopping, trying to find this passion. I was driving myself crazy trying to find my passion so I could be happy with the work that I would do. I ended up not having any job. I graduated from college, Western Michigan University, and I didn't have a job, no job prospects. So I just, flew out, or I drove my car out to Colorado and bunked up with my brother and his family while I tried to find a job. And I thought, man, if I could just find that right job, then I'd be happy in my career. The problem was that with no direction and really no skills, because I had changed my major so many times, I wasn't a very valuable candidate. And the great jobs that were out there weren't hiring a 21-year-old kid with no experience and without a whole lot of conviction and passion about what direction he wanted to go in. And I couldn't find a job. I interviewed with a lot of different places. It took me 3 months just to get a job. And at the end of 3 months, my brother and his wife were ready to kick me out of their house. They had 2 young kids. And so I just took the job that gave me an offer, and it was selling recycled ink cartridges that go inside of copy machines. I was a recycled ink salesman. It was the only job that would pay me enough money for me to go live in a room with a buddy and get out of my brother's house. So after all of this struggle and thinking, what's my passion and where am I going to be happy? I ended up taking a very low level job selling ink cartridges that went into copy machines. So maybe all of that flip flopping of majors and trying to find my passion, it really wasn't the best advice for me. And what Cal Newport argues in this book is that following your passion is actually really bad advice for finding work that's fulfilling. It puts a ton of pressure on us to figure out what that passion even is. And, this was me changing my major 4 times and having all this anxiety about what am I passionate about? So there's some good news here. And the good news is there's a much better way to be so happy in your career. Cal says it starts with great ability. You need to get really, really good at something before you can get a really, really good job. Great jobs, like the dream jobs, they are fun, exciting, and everyone wants these dream jobs. But dream jobs are 1, rare, and 2, really valuable. Think about a dream job. Maybe it's being a rock star up on stage, in an amazing band that's touring all over the world that everybody loves. Think about Taylor Swift. Well, Taylor Swift's ability is rare and valuable. You could also be a starving artist singer that hasn't developed your ability, or maybe doesn't even have the ability to develop your ability to Taylor Swift's level. And it wouldn't be a dream job playing dive bars at night, not making enough to make ends meet. So the same exact work, if you're not exceptional at it, can be miserable. So the first component of doing work you love is to develop really rare and valuable skill sets. Because when you have a rare and valuable skill set, you get to do rare and valuable work. The advice, do what you love, kind of creates career confusion. So Cal Newport argues that rule number 1 is don't follow your passion. He says the passion hypothesis, that if you just do work you're passionate about, is going to make you less happy in your career. For me, I said my passion was art. So I changed my major to art, only to find that I didn't actually have rare and valuable skills as an artist. And even if I had maxed out my abilities in art, I would not have earned one of the rare and valuable jobs. At that time, I was at Western Michigan University in the art department, and the number 1 guy in the program, like lights out, incredible artist. He landed the one job that was rare and valuable. He was working on the movie The Matrix, and he was actually drawing the graphic designs of the scene where Morpheus jumps from the building into the helicopter, and the bullet shells are going, and bullets are firing, and you're watching the shells fall. That's all an artist designs that, in the movie. And my buddy who was in this program, he was the guy that got to do that job. I realized I would never be the guy that could do that job because my skill set could never get to that level. Maybe decades down the line, it could. I just didn't have the stick-to-itiveness to try to develop it to see if it would turn out, which is why I changed my major again. So what does make us happy at work? There are 4 components that make us happy at work. It's not doing the thing you're passionate about. It's not me drawing pictures all day. I was passionate about art. Or me playing basketball all day. I was passionate about playing basketball. Again, my skill set in basketball is never going to get to the rare and valuable skill set where I could be a professional player. It just isn't. But what makes us happy at work? The first thing that makes us happy at work is autonomy. This is having control over what you do and when you do it. The second thing that makes us happy at work is impact. Impact means that you're making a difference in people's lives. You know that your work matters. The third thing that makes us happy at work is having the ability to be creative, doing things that express our creative ability, that let us use our imagination. And the fourth thing that makes us happy at work is connection with others. When we have deep and meaningful connection with people we care about, who care about us. These are the four components that make a job wonderful. This is a dream job elixir. I'll name them one more time. So if when you're looking for work that's going to make you happy, it's going to, one, give you autonomy, freedom, and control. That's the first thing. And that's the most important thing. Two, it's going to have an impact, make an impact in people's lives. Three, you get to be creative and use your imagination. And four, you get to have connection with people you care about. So if you have a job right now that has some combination of those four elements, guess what? You're in your dream job. So that could be very good news. And if you have a job that maybe doesn't have those elements, this episode is going to talk about how we can either find that job or how we can make our current job embody those elements. The wait is finally over. The Good Mood Revolution book is officially available for pre-order on Amazon today. You can go to Amazon and look for Good Mood Revolution book. And in this book, you're going to find the 8 bad moods that get in the way of your happiness. You're going to learn strategies on how to overcome each of these 8 negative thoughts. They're all lies anyway. And then what the thought patterns are that make us happy every single day. You're also going to learn strategies that can make you really feel fulfilled in your life and make other people around you feel fulfilled as well. So go on Amazon, look for Good Mood Revolution book, and order yours today. Rule number 2 on Cal's book says, be so good they can't ignore you. This rule is about developing incredible skill. To be happy at work, he says, you have to get really, really good. Be so good they can't ignore you is a quote from Steve Martin. Steve Martin, the great comedian who was on Saturday Night Live and has all these great stand-ups. He was an actor that was in Father of the Bride and Father of the Bride 2 and many just super funny movies. He was interviewed one time about how you get to be Steve Martin. And his job was rare and valuable. Being an actor that everybody adores, being on Saturday Night Live, having sold out shows, like that's a rare and valuable job. And somebody asked him in an interview, how do you get to be you? How do I get to have your job? And his answer was, you have to get so good, they can't ignore you. This means you have to focus on your craft and you have to work at it and work at it and work at it. And it's not just working at it. You know, this is a concept of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means that, and this came from Malcolm Gladwell in his book in Outliers, where he talked about the 10,000 hour rule. He said, just because you've driven a car for 10,000 hours doesn't mean you could compete in the Grand Prix. Driving your car for 10,000 hours is not deliberately practicing how to drive a car at an elite level. So I have driven a car for 10,000 hours at this point, and I'm not an elite level driver. I'm a decent driver, but this is the same kind of thing. If I just mindlessly tried to do comedy and I did it for 10,000 hours, I probably wouldn't get to Steve Martin's skill set. If instead I practiced deliberately, I studied the greats, I read all the books about how to be a great comedian, I went up on stage, I had coaches giving me feedback, I had people telling me where I could get better, and I practice and practice and practice my craft with an intensity and a focus. There is a potential after 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years, that I could become an elite level comedian. There's a potential. Now, you gotta have some passion to want to do that. Steve had the passion to want to do that. This is kind of like me in art. Even though I was passionate about art, I didn't have enough gumption to put in that kind of work and get that good at that particular thing. So you have to adopt a relentless focus on becoming so good that people can't ignore you. When you do that, your skills become rare and valuable, and you get to have a job that is rare and valuable. You know, a lot of advice right now is talking about how if you want to live your dream job, you have to have the courage to quit your bad job and then go follow your dreams. And I have so many people reach out wanting to be on the Good Mood Revolution podcast. a few people every single day of the week. It's dozens of people a week. It's, hundreds of people in the months. And many of them have the same story. They're like, I was working in my corporate job and I was bored out of my mind. And so I quit and I became a coach. And now I coach people on how to quit their job and follow their dreams. And it's kind of the same story over and over and over again. However, I don't think that the majority of these people that just quit their corporate job are actually enjoying their life as much now, trying to be a coach that's suffering and maybe not making enough money to make ends meet. I don't know that all these people that are asking to be on this podcast are actually happier right now. And Cal Newport would say that most likely they're not. And he's got many studies in this book about people who just had courage and quit their job to follow their dreams that ended up worse off. And in one case, somebody here is on food stamps. So courage isn't always the answer. If I were to just take a leap of courage and say, all right, I'm going to shut down my real estate company and become a full-time writer and a full-time podcaster. And I've got 4 kids and my wife, and we've got bills, and we have these bills that we want to pay. And sometimes we like to go on vacation. We wouldn't have any money to do any of that stuff. And maybe or maybe not, it would work out within years of time. But the stress and the pressure that would be put on me to have to make this work, it would be miserable for years on end. So for me, I have a passion about helping people feel happier. That's a passion. I'm not following my passion with my career, where I'm quitting everything and using this courage to say, every single day, 40 hours a week, I'm going to be making people happier. And that's what I'm going to do. I think that would actually make my life worse. I think it would make me less happy, because the stress and the financial pressure that my family and I would be under would be mounting. Our bills would mount. My kids wouldn't be able to have some of the things that they have. Maybe we wouldn't go on vacations. Maybe there wouldn't be enough money for food. And I don't think that that's worth it. So instead, I woke up every morning before the kids, and it took me 4 years. But in 4 years' time, I wrote the book that was the song of my heart, Good Mood Revolution. And for, maybe 5-6 hours a week, I devote 5 or 6 hours a week to writing a great podcast episode, to finding a great guest, and to producing a great show on a once a week podcast. This to me is a hobby. It's a passion project. But I don't think if I made it my career, I would be happier just because I'm passionate about it. So just consider, instead of quitting your job and having the courage to quit this job, maybe you could be happier just doing things that you're doing right now that are providing for your family, and then using your passion to do things you enjoy as a hobby. Let's talk about what to do in your career to be more happy in the job you have. This is going to come down to getting more career capital. The better you get at your job, the more career capital you get. You want to develop your skills. Now, I want to do a caveat here. Cal Newport says there are 3 things that are non-negotiables, where if one of these 3 things exists, you probably need to get a new job. 1, your current job doesn't allow you to develop skills that would become rare and valuable. This would be, like a manual labor job. I would say if all you do is a job that a machine could replace, you're probably not developing skills that are rare and valuable. Think about like the old toll booth worker. If you're a toll booth worker, we know there are currently machines that can take money and do the job of a toll booth worker. So if your job is something that could be replaced by a machine, you probably need to move into a new career where you can develop something that's going to be really valuable. 2, another reason why you may want to consider making a career change is if your job focuses on something that's useless or even bad for the world. For me, the only job I could get out of college was selling recycled toner cartridges. Recycled toner cartridges are kind of useless. It's not something anyone cares about. So that wasn't a job that I was going to be able to ever get excited about. It wasn't really good for the world. It wasn't making an impact, which is one of the 4 things that create great work. So I eventually did leave that job to find something that was going to make more of an impact. The 3rd reason you may want to consider changing your job is if you have to work with people you really don't like. And I'll tell you, the toner cartridge job, I had some friends there that were great friends, but I also had bosses that were kind of oppressive. I'm sure they were great people. I know they were great people, but the work environment was a little bit toxic. I remember our friends were there. It was Christmas Eve day, and we're laughing and having a good time, and we have to work until like 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve day, and the next day is Christmas. And we're out there joking and laughing and telling stories and having a good time. Like, no one is actually picking up the phone on Christmas Eve day to buy a recycled toner cartridge. So there wasn't any work that we could do. And I remember my boss comes out, stern look on his face. He's so mad. And he yells at all of us to get back to work, that he was paying us to work that day. And if we wanted our jobs, we had to get to work and we had to stop messing around. Well, if you have a boss that treats you like that, truly Ebenezer Scrooge getting upset at Cratchit, that was the exact situation that I was in. That's a toxic work environment. And that's probably a job that you're going to need to move on from. It's different if there's somebody that isn't your direct supervisor that you don't like. Maybe you can find ways to continue to be happy there with everyone else, and this one person you don't have to interact with much. But if it's your direct supervisor that's that doesn't treat you well, that's probably a reason that you're going to need to look for a different job. Are you looking to take your happiness to another level? If you're looking to be more successful, we need to be happier, because success and happiness go hand in hand. But sometimes we get stuck in thought patterns we don't even know are holding us back. And we need a coach or a mentor to see things we can't see with our own eyes. I've had coaches and mentors help me access levels of happiness I couldn't have achieved without them. I'm now offering that same service to a small, select number of people. If you think one-on-one coaching could elevate your happiness, go to mattoneil.com and click the coaching tab to learn more. I look forward to talking with you. Well, I'll tell you what, that job selling recycled toner actually fit one of those criteria. It did help me develop a skill that was rare and valuable. I was selling recycled toner, which is a really hard thing to sell, and I developed rare and valuable skills as a salesperson. I spent 3 years becoming so good at selling that I could get you to buy something you didn't even need that was probably inferior to the product that you had, which was non-recycled toner cartridges. And I got really good at sales. But I had to leave that job because it was not making a positive impact in the world, and because I had some people in the company that made it kind of a toxic working environment for me. So I took this rare and valuable skill and I went into the mountains of Colorado and I said, I know I need to change my career, but I like selling and I'm good at it. And I've developed this great skill. What could I sell that would make a positive impact in the world and where I could be around people that I would like? And in the mountains of Colorado, I got an answer. And at this time, I wasn't super religious, but I knew enough to go ask nature what to do. And I got a very clear knowing when I was in the mountains of Colorado: get into real estate. I don't know why, but it's interesting. God's always with us, even if we don't think he is. I kept getting these little clues that real estate was my destiny. My uncle was in real estate and he called me and he would tell me about how great it was. And I played basketball with this guy who was a real estate agent. And I used to think, man, he's got the best job. And then another real estate agent sold my brother's house. And my brother was saying, man, this guy is really awesome. And he's got this dream life and he's this real estate agent. And so I kind of had all these little clues about real estate that were being thrown in front of me. Not that it's the best job in the world for everyone, but it was my career path. It was where I was supposed to go. And I was being guided to it. And so when I got into the mountains and I asked the question of God at that point, to me, it was nature, the universe. I said, what should I do with this skill of sales that I have? The answer came to me. And all of a sudden I saw all those little clues that I was supposed to get into real estate. And I said, great, I'll get into real estate. This started me on a path of using my rare and valuable skill of sales and doing work that would make a positive impact in people's lives, like that was good for the world. People, they raise their family in their home. They live the life of their dreams getting their dream home. This is where all the memories are made. Shelter is one of the major components of survival. And getting into real estate was amazing for me because I started to notice I was making people's dreams come true. And my work became impactful, which is one of the 4 components of doing work you love. But I wasn't great at it. So I had some sales skills because I developed them, but I didn't have great real estate skills. So the next thing Cal Newport argues to get really, really happy with your work is you have to get really, really good at it. So good they can't ignore you. You do this with deliberate practice. And we talked about this about becoming a race car driver. If I had just kind of gone through the motions and did 10,000 hours of being a mediocre real estate agent, I probably wouldn't have ever really loved my career. There's a lot of real estate agents that don't love being real estate agents. So to get really, really good at something, you have to do things that stretch your ability beyond where it currently is. And you have to seek constant critical feedback. And you have to study from the best and model it. So what I did is I set goals that were beyond my ability. I remember specifically I had sold 6 million in real estate, which was a good year. And I had somebody say, "Hey, what's your goal next year?" And I said, "I want to sell 18 million in real estate." Now it's kind of an unrealistic goal to go from 6 million to triple it, 300% growth in the next year. But I was setting this goal that was beyond my current ability. I was stretching myself. That's component number 1 of deliberate practice. Then to do it, I hired feedback. I hired a coach. And the coach was critiquing me and telling me where I wasn't good enough and how I could get better. And then the third component, I studied the best. So I started to fly every year to hang out with the top real estate agents in the country. And I would ask them what they were doing. And I would watch presentations about what they were doing. And I would take notes and I would come back and I would model what they were doing. And as a result, I grew skills in real estate that became rare and valuable. It took me a decade, 10 years, which is the 10,000 hour rule, 10 years of this deliberate practice of having critical feedback, of stretching myself, and of modeling the best people in the country. I finally did it. Out of 7,000 real estate agents in Charleston, South Carolina, I became number 3 in the entire area. And my 10th year in the business of doing the best I could and continuing to iterate, that year I sold 38 million in homes in a single year. And it was the 3rd best in the entire area. And so I became elite, which was great. So what you need to do is get really, really good before you can expect to have a good job. So now my job was really good. Since my skill set had grown so high, I had grown a reputation of being really good because I was really good. And so I got to sell multi-million-dollar mansions. Like I got to walk into houses that I could only dream of owning. On the water, private libraries and secret rooms. Like it was crazy. It was awesome. And I'm now walking through lifestyles of the rich and famous. But when I started, I didn't get to sell luxury mansions because my skills weren't rare and valuable. It was through 10 years of deliberate practice that my skills got so good that I got to do the rare and valuable job of selling luxury homes. When I started, I sold $200,000 homes. 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, brick ranches with issues. That's what I started with because those are the people that would hire me when I didn't have the skill set. But I grew my skills and my job became better. So then I leveraged my career capital of being really good at being a real estate agent after 10 years. And I said, now I have another thing that's great here. People want to learn from me. I've developed a skill set that's rare and valuable. And other people want to learn it from me. So I became a CEO. I moved from being a real estate agent to being someone who coached and trained real estate agents. Being a CEO of a company is another job that's rare and valuable, but you have to develop a skill set that's rare and valuable in order to get this cool job. The thing is, I was a bad CEO. So I was a really good real estate agent because I had developed those skills. But man, I was a bad CEO because I had not developed those skills. So in the same way that I had learned my real estate skills, I did those same 3 things, and it took me another 10 years to become a great CEO. But I set goals that were stretching my ability. I hired coaches. about how to be a great CEO. I hired Steve Gill, who's a business results coach at Tony Robbins' organization. I worked with Steve for 7 years. I hired Greg Crabtree. Greg Crabtree is the #1 accounting coach in the world. He's still my accounting coach. And he coached me on how to run finances at a business because I needed that coaching. I also modeled the best CEOs in the world. I read a ton of books. One of the books I read was Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish. That was the best book at the time on how to be a great CEO. I then read a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, which was an even better book on how to be a great CEO. And modeling these things over 10 years of deliberate practice, I became a great CEO. What happened is we went from a bunch of turnover, people didn't want to work with me because I was bad, to we became the #1 company to work for out of 470,000 companies in the state of South Carolina. It only took 10 years of deliberate practice. But this is what's cool, is that when you become really great, now what happens is really great people want to work with me and they don't want to leave us. And I get to work with all these amazing people. So it adds to the components of having a dream job. Work's never easy. Until I read this book, I thought, man, my job's really hard. Maybe there's a job that's easier that I would like more. But Cal said, no work is easy. If you're putting a roof on a house, that's hard work. It's not easy. It doesn't pay well. You don't have much freedom and autonomy. There's not really a whole lot of impact. And it's hard. If you're a salesman, that job's not easy. But if you get really rare and valuable skills, you can start to do really great work that's rare and valuable. It still won't be easy. Selling luxury homes was not easy at all. My luxury clients had super high expectations of me, and I had to deliver excellent performance. So even though it was a great job, it wasn't easy. Being a CEO, I have 80 different people that report under me in my companies. That is not easy at all. That's 80 people that are requiring me to be exceptional as a CEO for them to keep working with me. Like, that is so hard. There's a ton of pressure there, but it is a rare and valuable job because it has those 4 components that make a rare and valuable job. 1, I have autonomy and freedom to do it the way I want to do it. 2, I get to work with people that I really love. 3, I get to be creative. Like, anything I think of as a CEO, I get to try. And 4, I make a huge impact in people's lives. We help 500 families a year or more with their dream home. I help 80 different employees, people that work with me, have a financial future. Like, that is so satisfying. So I'm not saying this to brag about my job. I'm trying to just share my story so maybe it can shed some light on your story. The #1 thing you want to seek for in getting a rare and valuable great job, what Cal calls the dream job elixir, is autonomy, control, and freedom. If your current employer gives you freedom to do the work the way you see fit, control over how you do it, and autonomy to decide what kind of work you think is going to make the biggest impact for the company to get your job done, that is the most important component to doing work you love. Gaining control requires having career capital. It requires you being very good. If you become so good that they can't ignore you, if you're one of the best accountants in your practice, your bosses are going to give you freedom and control to do it the way you want to do it because they know you could go do that accounting job at any firm. If you're that good, anyone would want you. And that's going to be the first thing I want you to focus on in order to do work you love, in order to be super happy in your career. Get so good that you can use how good you are to create some freedom. The other piece of this equation is make sure you do work people are willing to pay for. Just because I love to produce a podcast doesn't mean people are willing to pay me to listen to this podcast. Now, it's one of the top 1.5% podcasts in the entire world. So it is one of the best podcasts out there. But I don't know that if I quit my job as real estate CEO, that people would be willing to pay me enough to live the lifestyle I want to live doing a podcast. So Cal calls this the law of financial viability. Before you just quit your job and follow your passion, see if people will pay you for it as you do it on the side. And if you start to see there's enough financial viability there, maybe then you make the leap. Another aspect to loving your work is doing it with a compelling mission. There's a story about 3 people that were laying bricks. Somebody came up to the first bricklayer and they said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, I'm laying bricks for a wall." And then he went over to the second bricklayer and he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm laying bricks to build a building." And then he went to the third bricklayer and they said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm laying bricks to build a beautiful cathedral as an honor to God." Now, this is a great story because it shows us that we can see our work as menial and not really making an impact. We can see it as kind of impactful, or we can see it as completely impactful. So think about my work, being a CEO of a real estate company. I could see that as I'm just doing it to make ends meet. I could do it to say, well, we're doing it to help people get good homes. Or I could do it in a way where I say, I'm changing people's lives. It's the same job with 3 different meanings. So when you think about your work, can you see it as satisfying a compelling mission where you're actually making an impact in the world? The impact is something that you get to decide. The final aspect of a dream job is doing work that is truly remarkable. When we had the honor of being named the #1 company to work for out of 470,000 small businesses in the state of South Carolina, it took us 20 years, 20 years to get to that level of being remarkable. You might have to work for years working to become better and better and better to finally be remarkable. Seth Godin talks about in his book, The Purple Cow, he said, there's a ton of brown cows. You drive through Indiana and you see brown cows everywhere. Now, but if you were to drive through and see a cow that was purple, well, now people would take notice. In fact, they'd probably put them on the news, and that purple cow would make you famous. Your job is to become so good that people notice you. And when they notice you, you get to leverage that notice because your work is remarkable into creating your dream job. Life isn't easy. It always takes work. Reading this book helped me love what I do. I have to be honest, before the book, I kind of took my job for granted. I thought it wasn't really that special, but I didn't know how good I had it. I'm hoping that this podcast opens your eyes to the fact that maybe you're in a better position than you think. Work's going to be hard. You've heard from some of my earlier podcasts that sometimes my job gets really, really hard. But again, to reiterate, the 4 components that make a dream job are 1, autonomy or freedom to do what you want to do it, like how you want to do it. 2, impact, making an impact in people's lives. 3, being able to use creativity. And 4, having connection with great people. You don't need to go follow your passion to find this happiness. Don't obsess about trying to find your true calling like I was doing in college. It can just lead you being confused. Instead, master skills that are rare and valuable, build career capital, and invest your career capital to create more freedom and control. If you're like me, you might just find that your current job is really freaking awesome. If, on the other hand, you do work with people you dislike, or you're doing things that harm the world, or you're not building rare and valuable skills, it's okay to make a change. Use your current skill sets and your current career capital to land a job with kind-hearted people you're going to really like. Do something that you stand behind that's making a positive impact in the world. And make sure you invest all the career capital you have to gain more freedom. The one thing we must remember is that it's not going to be easy. Great work requires strain, but life requires strain. Don't search for work that is easy. Instead, search for work that makes a difference, that you have to work hard for, but that makes you proud. This is how you find happiness in your career. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope that you have the most happiness ever in 2025 in your career, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.